For the first time ever, Fairy Tail has come to the Western market, and as a fan of the series, there was no way I was gonna miss out on the first game to get localized. Of the few long-running anime that I've seen, Fairy Tail is one of my favorites. Its focus and depiction of the deep bonds that characters share with each other was something that I thought was done really well. For this review, I'll be going over some of the events that occur, so spoiler warning for those who care. I wasn't sure what to expect from the game. I thought it would kind of be like Dragon Ball Kakarot, where it retold the story of the anime. At the very least, I assumed it would start from the beginning since this is basically the first Fairy Tail game. I was definitely thrown for a loop when they decided to start near the end of Season 4's Tenro Island arc, where Natsu and his friends fought against Grimoire Heart's guildmaster, Hades. The story then ends near the beginning of Season 9 with the conclusion of the Avatar arc, just short of the actual season finale resolution. There is no doubt that the game is catered towards existing fans, without much thought given to creating any new interest in the series. For new players who have never looked at any of the Fairy Tail material, it'll probably be incredibly difficult to follow along with the story and become invested. The characters' origin arcs are completely glossed over. These missing events are an integral part to the story. It's in these events that the characters develop their emotional bonds, and it's also where my own emotional attachments to them were formed. While some past affairs are briefly touched on in optional events and reading material, those don't replace the knowledge gained from the anime or manga. I mean, who really wants to read the encyclopedia on the pause menu? If you're gonna do some reading, might as well read the manga. With the rest of the story, a lot of the finer details and characters are left out, leaving it to be a diluted version of the source material. Like during the Eclipse arc. 3 of the 7 dragons that came out of the Eclipse Gate and the Garo Knights are completely removed. The entire Sun Village arc is briefly summarized by Lucy in an exposition cutscene, leaving out key elements like the village being Flair's hometown and Atlas Flame being the identity of the Eternal Flame. The following arc covering the Dark Guild Tartaros also cut out some content, such as 2 of its members, Torafusa and Azel, and the fight between Loxus and Tempester. The list goes on. A handful of side characters like Miliana and the Sabertooth Guildmaster are included in the main story and have some dialogue during cutscenes, but they themselves aren't visible because they lack models. The only time they're shown is if the cutscene used a picture from the anime as a cut-in. While the story leaves a lot to be desired, as someone who is already familiar with Fairy Tail, it was still enjoyable to go through all the iconic scenes from the anime. Coming in with background knowledge on all of the characters and events that are covered really helped make everything make sense and flow better. Luckily, the gameplay offered a much better experience. It's a very casual game without much difficulty. Though having a challenge is always something I look for, it's also nice to just have something relaxing to play every once in a while. Gust Studios opted to go with the turn-based approach to the combat system, which is a bit surprising. Considering how destructive the Fairy Tail Guild was, it would have made a lot more sense if combat was action-oriented with destructible buildings or environments. Still, the turn-based system worked out pretty well, and was more enjoyable than I anticipated. It was basic, but it had its own identity that made the experience unique. Enemies are placed on a 3x3 grid, and abilities will have various AoEs covering different ranges with different effects. For instance, Gray has a strong single target skill that knocks enemies back that can help set up the field for the next attack to hit more enemies. Combat also had various special mechanics that were pretty cool to use and added to the fun. Each character has a special meter that builds up as they attack or receive damage. This is used to back up allies by performing follow-up attacks. The best part is that it allows characters to awaken by consuming the full meter, giving them buffs like recovering a significant amount of health and MP. Some characters also have a special form that adds even bigger stat increases and new abilities rather than have the recovery buff, so there are a lot of options available to mix things up. Attacks will also build up a general special meter called the Fairy Gauge. This gauge is used to perform Magic Chain, a powerful combo performed by the party. During a Magic Chain, another awesome skill called Unison Raid can be unleashed, which has 2 allies combine their abilities together to perform a strong attack. Unison Raids can be performed by any 2 people, but only a few pairs will have unique attacks, such as Natsu and Gray. At the end of the chain, there is a chance to finish with a high damaging extreme spell. All these mechanics made combat interesting, but one thing that stuck out the most was the amazing animations. They're all done really well with the visual effects and camera angles. It's very true to how attacks were shown in the anime, which is great. The only thing that was kind of weird was hearing Natsu's high-pitched screaming that's more over the top than what I remembered. I feel bad for Tetsuya Kakihara for probably having destroyed his vocal cords to record those lines. While looking at the animations never got tiring, having the option to turn them off was a nice touch, because sometimes I just needed to get through the fights more quickly. Some abilities take way too long to show, like Lucy's Uranometria, so I'm glad I was able to skip them whenever I wanted. Outside of combat, gameplay consisted of exploring the continent of Fiori, and doing everyday guild things that I would expect of Fairy Tail, like rising in ranking and helping people out. It was cool to be able to see the world come to life as I visited each area. However, there were some slight disappointments. The towns were filled with NPCs, but there were very few unique models. Often, I would walk down the street and see multiple NPCs that look exactly the same right next to each other. Maybe Fiori is actually just a country that has an unbelievable amount of twins. But probably not. The areas that could be accessed were also fairly limited, consisting of only 2 towns and a handful of levels. Despite these minor setbacks, the numerous activities available to complete in Fiore kept me occupied and made the gameplay experience feel more enjoyable. Community quests can be found in many places, and while these are very basic fetch quests, they do offer nice rewards with very little effort. I typically already had the items on hand when picking up the quests from NPCs, so it was always just a matter of talking to them as I was doing other things. Normal quests can also be accepted from the request board found at the guild hall. The board contains various requests from the people of Fiori that can be repeated, but will also have unique character-specific requests that add a bit more background to the characters and the world. Character stories are another one of the activities that become available as more progress is made. These consist of doing various small requests, and are also one of the few side events that provide a lot of the character development outside of the main story. They filled in some of the holes that weren't covered, or acted as a refresher for past conflicts that might have been forgotten. Completing these stories will also create new friendships with the characters involved, and thus allow them to join the party. As an added bonus, these stories also raise the limit of character ranks, which can be increased to provide useful passive bonuses. Bonding events are yet another way of becoming more familiar with each of the characters, but they're the least impactful. Characters will strengthen their bonds with each other as they complete requests together, or by having a link party in the guild hall. When their bond is strong enough, an event becomes available which will just show a brief conversation between the two. That's it. Nothing else happens. Some characters don't even have a cutscene. Their bond just increases. This was jarring at first, making me think I accidentally skipped it. But nope, they just didn't have one. These events were so basic, it was a letdown. At the very least, it gives additional passive bonuses, so I guess there's that. Fairy Tail also has 2 progression systems, Guild Hall upgrades and Lacrima, to complete the gameplay experience. Standard equipables such as swords and armor aren't used in builds. Instead, we have magical stones called Lacrima. They generally give pretty basic stat bonuses like more defense or having a status ailment added to an attack. But there are also some pretty unique ones that did more than that. Each character has a special Lacrima designed specifically for them that gives more unique bonuses, like Gray's Ice Crystal Lacrima that increases his damage at the cost of using more MP. Since these were the only unique equipables, outside of a couple Lacrima, all my builds were mostly the same, which made it feel like there wasn't much diversity in the roles. Guild Hall upgrades have additional passive benefits while also improving the look of the Guild Hall. Fairy Tail has to work their way up from the bottom again due to various circumstances in the story, so they start off with a rundown shack as their home base with low quality facilities. As each facility in the Guild Hall gets upgraded, they not only offer more services, but also improve aesthetically. In addition, facilities can also be remodeled to improve on the passive bonuses they provide, like having more items in the storeroom. Fairy Tail is a simple game when it really comes down to it. None of its mechanics are particularly complex or deep, but they don't have to be. The game does exactly what it needs to capture the essence of what Fairy Tail is about. It's a fun story about a group of rambunctious, tight-knit friends going on adventures together. The game is easy for any existing fan to get sucked into and enjoy, but it'll probably be a different story for those whose first experience with Fairy Tail is with the game. While there are definitely things it can improve on, its story, gameplay, and exploration worked well together to create a fun and relaxing experience. This game let me relive my favorite moments from the anime and gave me a reminder of why I became a Fairy Tail fan in the first place.